Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Association Rockstars, where we hear about the journey and insights of amazing association executives and partners who are building the association industry of tomorrow. I am your host, Lowell Aplebaum, the CEO of Vista Cova, where we partner with organizations on strategy, governance, and amazing facilitation. And you have tuned in for what is, although every episode is amazing, what is always the best episode of the year, which is where we bring back our rock stars from throughout the year for a panel dialogue in what we lovingly call in my house the opportunity for reflection projection. Now, rather than New Year's resolutions that you make and don't keep, reflection projection, the ability to take a look back, take a look forward, and hopefully together get some semblance of intention and potential for what could be ahead. I am happy to have with me today in first name alphabetical order so that we can change it up a little bit. First, we have Chip Flater, who's here from the Director of IT at the National Science Teaching Association. Jason Wampler serves as Managing Director of IT for the International Society of Automation. Josie Hernandez is an account executive at Bostrom, an association management company. Julia Miller is Director of Communication at the Minnesota Credit Union Network. And we are all jealous of her being outside with palm trees. Kate Fryer is the Chief Executive Officer of the Endocrine Society, and Stephen Stout is the Executive Director of the Texas Society of Association Executives. Thank you all for being here, my friends. It's so wonderful to have you. So we have a handful of questions to get us started. And as always, all of you who are joining us from afar, if you would like to ask any questions of reflection or projection to our panelists, please feel free to add them in. There's a Q&A button or even into the chat. Amy's there monitoring. We'll make sure that we know that along the way as well. And so, Kate, we'll start with you. As you think about 2025 and the leadership lessons this year has taught us, I guess we could say the lessons in general this year has taught us, but certainly the leadership ones. What sits with you at this moment is what those are.
I guess I have sort of two answers to that question. The first is as an industry, as a field of association management. I think there was really while it's always important and we've always known it, being really thoughtful about risk management and mitigation took on like a new level of importance this year, and in areas that I'm not sure we were always necessarily thinking, right? The fragility of our business models for many of us, particularly in the science and healthcare areas, became really apparent. The litigious nature, particularly in the US, and it being used to try and do things, around social issues and stop conversations has taken some getting used to, along with all the other kinds of general risks that we are used to managing. So I think it became clear that having structures in place, both to monitor and adapt to these, but also to tee up conversations with our boards and our member leaders about risk tolerance, because of course that isn't a static thing either, and it has changed, at least of course in our organization, over the course of the year, depending on what was going on externally.
Yeah.
For me personally, it was a very different lesson this year, and without I had a very difficult personal year, and it was paired. Nobody would ever choose to do that in a difficult and tumultuous business year, and while I knew this lesson. Knew it. I have learned it in a visceral way that I is different now, which is the uniqueness of the CEO position and the fact that while my team has a lot of empathy for Kate, there is an expectation that the CEO show up no matter what is going on. There is and I haven't quite reconciled. I'm still grappling with what does that mean? How does a CEO show up as a whole human? in an
Mhm.
office environment, and what does that take? And so there's some things I would have done very differently in hindsight and learned some lessons there, but I think it's a one I'm still grappling a little with.
All three of those feel like they could be their own episodes unto themselves. I'll make a quick comment about the second, then Stephen, I'll turn to you next for your reflections. Yesterday, I was with Chima, the Society for the Higher Education Associations, and their CEOs, and we did an hour and a half on risk management, going through a whole framework of how do you build risk dashboards for your boards to actually have some fluency in thinking about the dimensions of risk, right? Fiscal, operational, strategic, reputational, governance, so that hopefully they come to the table not just making gut decisions, but knowing how to talk about it and consider it. And it actually could help them take smarter risks if they were fluent in it.
Yeah.
Interesting times.
Yes, it is.
Stephen, what lessons do you have for us?
Yeah, like sort of like Kate, a lot of the things I thought about as far as what's affecting the industry also affected me personally. For instance, a lot of us are super fascinated with artificial intelligence, as am I. But sort of digging deep into that space, I've discovered throughout the year that emotional intelligence used to be considered a soft skill, but now I feel like it's a hard skill. You that is your bread and butter now because everything's becoming automated and becoming more technologically advanced. The more human you can seem or appear, the more attention you'll garner. So that's been an interesting shift, I think, in 2025. AI going from a soft skill to a hard skill, and then something learned personally and professionally. Resilience beats perfection, it seems, in 2025. What a decade 2025 has been for all of us. And so adjusting to those things that come at us every single day and not being able to take maybe as much time as we like to sort of gather our thoughts and then execute whatever we need to. We're just sort of like swinging at all the tennis balls coming at us. And that's okay. We used to be really fascinated with perfection, but now it's, I think there's been given this a sort of like quiet permission to everybody to like just get through it. It has a very nostalgic feel of 2020. We don't know what we're doing. We're just doing it, and we're gonna see if it hits. If it doesn't, we'll move on to the next thing. And then also, trust.
Can I just point out,
Yeah,
you say nostalgia, but you mean nightmare for some people.
right.
You say
Yes,
nostalgia.
nostalgic nightmare. Yeah. And then of course, like trust has become like a real performance multiplier. Like, um, if you're a trust organization, that's worth its weight in gold, and probably more so than it has been in years past. And then something I found interesting in talking to a lot of leaders, especially again who we are SAE in the state of Texas, um, development can't be optional anymore, right? The everybody needs development in the organization, not just the leaders, the C-suites, because you'll end up doing everything yourself and you will burn out. So it's really important to make sure everybody's getting developed and everybody's moving the organization forward. And those are just like some things I've seen in 2025 that I feel like have stuck with me throughout the 365 days it is 2025 so far.
Yeah. I, you know, I think it's Simon Sinek who like wants to delete the frame of soft skill from our
Yeah,
vocabulary, uh, because the skills that those refer to are almost always the baseline of whether or not you succeed. And at least this year in particular, I've heard them referred to as relational strengths.
yeah,
And so as we think about not just what we seek in the staff when we bring in, and to my friends who haven't yet answered, I'm about to ask the rest of you if you have your own reflections of the lessons from the year. Uh, whether it's the staff that you bring in or frankly, the obligation we have to provide the pathways, as you said, Stephen, of development, either for the staff we have or for our board members.
yeah,
Look, we could send someone to a course on how to use ChatGPT, right?
right.
We can run a class on how do you read a budget. I don't think we can abandon the concept that we need to also be able to provide development when it comes to developing your relational strengths.
Yeah, absolutely.
But those may be less academic and more experiential.
Right.
And that may be an opportunity for the next half decade for us to think about in terms of how we develop those things. Others who have not answered, anyone else want to reflect on some good lessons that you learned from this past a year that's been a decade, as Stephen called it.
I'm happy to share to build upon what both Stephen and Kate
Yeah,
offered. I think resilience has been a big theme for me, so definitely with that, and to Kate's point in terms of being an individual and how do you navigate a challenging year upon then maybe having some personal challenges, which Stephen touched on as well, is that idea of building collaboration and where trust fits in that, where you may have to lean on others and ensuring that you are developing those around you. Working in an AMC model, it is a small staff, right? And so ensuring that you are developing, those what they call soft skills as well, in order to have someone to support you in those times, and so that uh, people have all of the training and understanding in order to be able to lean on each other, flex up and flex down as needed throughout the year. So I think that being agile with this year has really been, those are the themes for me personally.
great. And hopefully agility is something that could be a skill that uh, is not something for just this year, but is an expertise that guides us in a time that my favorite quote of this month is this is the fastest things have ever changed and the slowest things that ever anything ever will change right this moment in time. And so the need for agility as expertise uh, definitely resonates. Didn't mean to
Well,
terrify you, Beth.
yeah. Well, I'll throw one other thing out there, and it seemed like this year probably had more of this one topic than anything is learning how to embrace disruption. Because whether it was on the policy front or with how AI's quote unquote coming for our jobs, even though I'm in the automation space, it's not. You're still going to have a human in the loop. Um, I think trying to change our mindset to be that more entrepreneurial in thought on how to look at our membership models different. How do I look at our content delivery different? I mean, it's just requiring us to have to get out of our comfort zone and try to just start throwing ideas on the board and see what's going to work.
Mm. The First, I just need to acknowledge I made a quote that I didn't know where it's from, and Jamie Notter was qu kind enough to give it to me. And that now I can actually reference it to Justin Trudeau from pre-pandemic 2018 was the pace of change. Uh, Jason, it's interesting. I'm wrapping up a study now that I've seen more organizations actually shifting to an entrepreneurial operating system, an EOS way to function. Uh, and that's sort of taken, at least I've heard more of a conversational tone, less like we have to be like a for-profit and more like we have to be like entrepreneurs, right? And I think that that speaks certainly to some of what we've heard from our three previous colleagues, but the ability to combine scrappiness with innovation, with the willingness to spin, scale, learn from, and then go from there. Uh, that hopefully is a skill set we're all developing.
Yeah,
How we measure it, how we structure it. Yeah.
yeah, taking from Silicon Valley that whole fail fast, it is
Mm.
hard because associations are risk averse. So then how do you get out of your literal comfort zone of trying to learn in that manner?
Well, I will say I think part of the problem is we call it fail fast. If you said learn fast, right? How do we learn fast? Because there is no board member that says that they want failure to happen during their term. But if during their term, it is a term of the organization investing in learning for wisdom that emerges and future strength, that's a different premise. I don't have to answer, we'll just see. Chip or Julia, either of you have lessons from the past year that you want to share? If not, it's okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
Chip.
Julia, go ahead.
Okay.
Palm Springs wins. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, don't feel too jealous of me because I'm heading back to the frozen tundra of Minnesota. So this is a brief respite from the frozen temps. But I think this year, piggybacking off of the comment on the need for emotional intelligence, I think this year It was a hard year in Minnesota for a variety. There are a variety of instances and reasons, and I think empathy is something that is really critical for leaders this year, and just everyone's coming from a different perspective and how they show up for work and how they serve their members. And I think um, understanding that everyone has a different reaction to the world around us, and just to keep the focus on our mission and serving our members.
Mm. You know, we never know what someone's navigating and facing beyond what we see on the Zoom screen, right? And I've had a number of conversations lately with executives that talk about having to share and show deep care, like, and wanting to, and how you balance that with also the need to have output, right? And how do you balance like empathy and expectations, and the art that comes with that. And I'll just reference the comment we got in the chat from Kate around, and although Kate, you're referring to it in terms of a small staff, I've seen it with mid and large staffs too. The friction from it's not my job to it's everyone's job. But how do you build in shared accountability? How do you build in that even if it's not on your plate, right? When we do better, I do better. And so how do we support one another where we can? It's a real effort in terms of culture and not just structure. Chip, do you have one? If not, we'll keep going.
I was just going to piggyback real quick on the talk of the entrepreneurial spirit. I think that has been a great lesson in the past year, at least for a lot of us as associations begin to embrace the entrepreneurial and that entrepreneurial spirit, and taking those, as you said, like taking those lessons from Silicon Valley. I think Jason, you mentioned that, and that especially at a time like now where so many private companies are kind of chipping away at the traditional models of the association, that embracing that spirit's really going to be part of the key in moving forward, to the key of the success of all of us.
I love that. Uh, I'm gonna throw my own in as well, joining the panel for a moment, which is if we go back to Trudeau's quote about the speed of change, the lesson I would take away is that the organizations that we are trying to lead have not done a great job of creating the space for reflection, right? Everything is about with the speed of change. It's do the thing, get the thing, check the box, where there's 5 other things waiting. And the relief comes that there's one less thing on the plate because there's 10 other things on the plate. And what that robs us of is the ability to actually learn, the ability to celebrate, the ability to appreciate, right? Because it's just a thing we've done instead of a thing that can make us better. And that's everything from if you looked back at your board's minutes and decisions from January and see how those played out now, right? Like those decisions, where did they actually go? And then if you played the Back to the Future, if you had a flux capacitor, right? Like, would you make the same decision? What would we have known? Were they the right decisions? The lesson I would say 2025 has taught us, that I see organizations have the opportunity to learn, is that the rate of change should not rob you of the power of reflection. But if it is not intentionally designed and put in, it will disappear and you will be worse because of it, because you'll just be short sprinting instead of building. That would be my lesson on the year. All right, Chip, Josie, you're first up for this one. Where are you investing in yourself in the year ahead for your continued growth and success? Josie, Chip, who wants to go first?
I'll
You
go
want to go,
first.
Josie, or shall I?
Go ahead.
What was that?
Josie,
I
you
will
can
go
go
ahead.
first. Where are you
Okay,
investing
great.
yourself in the year?
Yeah, so this is a good segue from our first question for me, because I find my strengths to be in other areas outside of technology, right? I don't consider myself necessarily to be an early adopter. I see myself as a leader that brings people together and allows their strengths to support the whole and build the whole. But definitely in the next year, I am going to focus and challenge myself in the use of artificial intelligence and the understanding and really, doing something different. Because I think, as you said, it just is there, and I think it's our responsibility to do that. So that is my focus for the year.
Uh, I love that. The art AI and learning about it is certainly not going anywhere, but how I have a feeling how we learn about it is going to continue to evolve and change. Chip.
Um, so I'm going to kind of piggyback a little bit on the entrepreneurial spirit here. In the year ahead, I'm going to be investing in deepening my expertise in digital transformation, specifically around associations. Um, as I mentioned, like private industry is just rapidly innovating and is chipping away at the association's traditional business model. And so to stay ahead of that curve, I'm focusing on expanding my ability to help associations with modernizing their technology, streamlining operations, and better leveraging data and AI specifically, so they can remain indispensable to their members. I think it's important to note that associations have these incredibly unique business models where it's this reinvestment loop where every dollar that's spent into your association by a member, it gets reinvested into more products and services that helps that community. And I think it's very valuable today. And my goal is to strengthen that loop and by ensuring associations have the digital capabilities and operational efficiencies to thrive in that competitive landscape.
Excellent. Thank you. Learning should be part of all of our journeys. Anyone else want to talk to us about where you're investing yourself in the year ahead? Steven, I saw you on mute.
Yeah. Picking up what Josie said about artificial intelligence, obviously that's a focus as an SAE. That's something we've been looking into and how associations should play with it and use it. And we've been doing sessions on the bright, shiny new tools and how capacity is always an issue for associations, and these tools are helping with capacity. But we're having a lot of interesting conversations at our leadership level talking about we should also be talking about using it responsibly and ethically, as opposed to just play with the shiny new toy and start running with it. How do you use it ethically? How do you use it responsibly? So I'm going to dive more deeper into that area, more so than learning AI, but learning on that side of it, which has just been a very interesting conversation because we have been so fascinated and sort of infatuated with all the cool things it can do for us now. I know there was in the chat there someone mentioned they're a small staff. We're a small staff. We're six. And so, but we do a lot, and AI has just been like a
You do a
fantastic.
lot well. You do a
Thank
lot
you.
well.
Thanks, Lowell. But it's just, and it's hard not to get so enamored and romanticized with it about all it can do, but to take a beat and really think about like, okay, if we do this, what does this mean? How does this change what we're doing? How does it change how we're perceived in the public eye when what we're doing? So we're going to lean harder into that. So I'm interested and fascinated to lean in that side of the AI conversation because to be honest, I haven't really touched it at all. I've been more on the side of like, look at this shiny new toy, look what all these things, cool things these things can do. So for me and for my work, we're going to sort of go down that path a little bit.
I feel like there's a little bit of foresight in that as well, in terms of things like I was reading a post today from someone, and I felt my head just went nope because the whole post sounded like AI wrote it, right? Like it has all the M dashes, that it isn't this, but it's that, like all the things that are the ChatGPT
It's doing, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which there was a period where, oh my goodness, prolific thoughts, and now it's like, oh, like where's their what for me it was like, where's their voice?
Yeah.
Right?
And that leads back into trust again, right? So if you're
That's why I'm
seeing
looking it
these,
up. Exactly.
you're
Yeah.
seeing these social media thing, you see the dash ever that they do all the time, and you're like, well, that AI wrote that. So do any humans work at that organization, or are they just, is it might just stop working and engaging with robots?
And where's the interplay, right? Like it's not
Exactly.
bad if AI helps,
Right. Absolutely.
right? But where's the interplay? Yeah, it's good. I again do not required to respond, but Jason, Kate, or Julia want to tell us where you're investing yourself in the year ahead?
I think I'm going to focus on shifting my perspective a little bit. And I guess going back to the theme of empathy, um, really think about the member experience. We're driven associations. We have to hit our strategic goals. We have to get our communications out, but I want to add the dimension of making sure that um, we're welcoming our members into our association and making sure that experience is as good as possible. So, leveraging AI for that, leveraging member journeys. So that sort of perspective shift for me is what I'm going to spend 2026 on.
Excellent.
I'm I'm focused around a particular nuance of the conversation around entrepreneurial cultures and thinking, because there's an advantage in the for-profit sector that there's a single measure of success, right? And we don't have that, and so it's pretty rare we have a product where all we have to do is make money. We're always trying to achieve some mission, and that. What are the guardrails, handrails? What's the structure around the organization that needs to be in place that channels that entrepreneurialness because we don't have this single goal? And I think there's a real danger if we're not cautious about how we do that, of like sort of everybody spinning off with their own interpretation of success.
Yes.
And so what do we need to do to help enable it in the organization? So that's my like focus for this piece of the conversation.
What's interesting about that, Kate, is that I mean, what occurs to me as you're saying it, that's probably I'd love to have a conversation with you about it. Uh, Inherently, success is often thought of as terminal. Like success comes because you accomplished something. And terminal success seems to happen less and less. And what we need to strive for is progress, right? Like, because there's a continued journey for so many of the larger endeavors and initiatives. And if we were focused on a progress culture rather than like a success terminal culture, what where does that work into entrepreneurial thinking and philosophy?
Right.
I I don't my voice in the panel, for those of you who joined us in years past, different than the other Rockstars episodes. Jason, do you have one? Or
I'm actually going to go, I think maybe a little different, but it's actually going to hit home on some of the other comments that have been made.
yeah,
Um, and when I heard this question, I thought, okay, yeah, I'm going to look something more for my career or whatever else. But you know what? Right now, I think next year I'm actually going to invest in like a little bit of self-care. Because as much as this year has been the tumultuous, rocky road and who knows what else, and then once you get done with work, it's like kids are doing this and families doing that, and then I'm going to check the news, and next thing you know, I'm doom scrolling all day long. I mean, it just you need to take some time and rebuild this so then I can share more that way.
yes, I love that. A philosophical shift I've seen in that conversation, as at least there's more conversation around mental health, particularly in executives, but for all staff, is that the idea of self-care has to really shift from being like, oh, that means you need 3 days away, right? Which is a band-aid. I'll just share that philosophically, for me, that means embracing the concept of sacred space, right? The idea that there are moments that you hold that other things cannot and will not take precedent over, so that they can be for you places of a salve, a refresh, a battery, a call what you will. Saying good morning to my kids every morning before they go to school. I don't care the time zone I'm in, right? Spending time and hearing about their days and FaceTiming, I step out of the board meeting and like takeoffs and landings on flights. I read books. That is sacred space. I do not work. I don't want like what are those places that are things that you are unwilling to give to other things because that is you prioritizing what is going to be your soul, right? I investing in myself. I'll just add in this past year was a year of trying to focus on scaling. I had a scaling coach, did a scaling assessment for the company, came up with a whole means to implement it. And so, touching on the entrepreneurial spirit we've been talking about, uh, for me, that means next year starting to pursue an MBA with a focus on entrepreneurship and family entrepreneurship. Uh, Next year will be in a decade of Vista Cova, and it's been a wonderful journey. And it feels like at some point the intersect is here of like to continue to be able to demonstrate excellence, you have to level yourself up. And so for me, that's the investment I'm making in me. Jason, Julia, you're up first for our next question, which is what inspires you about other leaders that you see in the association space? Not sure who would like to go first. I'll see who unmutes first, and that's who will go first. One of you has to unmute, though. There we
All
go,
right.
Julia.
Um, this is a great timely question for me. I'm just coming away from a meeting of the American Association of Credit Union Leagues, um, and so spending a lot of time with leaders across the country. And what I find inspiring and what's really unique about the association space is that some of us don't come from the industries we represent. Yet so I see so many leaders who, they develop their time and their talents to these industries or to these groups, and just how, um, the depth and the breadth of their knowledge and their commitment and passion. I don't come from a credit union background, and many others don't come from similar backgrounds to their industries that they're representing, and just seeing how they pivot their skills and their experiences and bring it to sort of harness the collaboration for the industries we represent.
And where you have the opportunity by being part of a network, right,
Hmm.
to see leaders in other spaces that are corollary to yours.
Hmm.
I think that's a good example as well of places of introspection and reflection.
Yeah. And just seeing how leaders just dive headfirst into these issues and um, really dig deep, and are responsive to their members, and keep tabs on the regulatory side and the legislative side, and how deeply embedded these leaders are in the success of their members.
Jason, I had you next, and then I'll turn to anyone
Mhm.
else on the panel that wants to share. What
Yeah.
inspires you about other leaders?
Um, how authentic they are and how willing they are to share and kind of like pass on that knowledge or almost like mentor, right? Because it's one of those where it's like they're continually learning, but they're also continually sharing at the same time. And it's just like they're almost like the conduit. I almost think of it, and it's kind of funny. Well, I can see your little baby Grogu in the back. Yeah. I was going to say Baby Yoda. But it's like letting the force go through you and not contain it, right?
Yeah.
So that's just one of those things that I think any of the real good, or at least leaders that you kind of gravitate to, they have that trait.
I love that. Others? What inspires you about other leaders you see in the association space?
I'll go. For Texas, of course, every other year has a legislative session. In 2025 was a legislative session for Texas, and a lot of the things our legislature does ends up on the national news for better or worse. And I have been incredibly impressed with how unyielding our members are. You know, I see them fighting the fight at the Capitol. Last legislative session in Texas, associations was mentioned one time on a bill put forward. In this session, the word association was mentioned 18 in different bills. So they are clearly paying attention to associations, whether they're coming after them or supporting them. And I talk to these people who are fighting these fights, and I'm like, aren't you tired? Aren't you just exhausted of doing this all the time? And they're like, well, what choice do I have? We have to keep fighting. And it's like, well, you do have a choice. Like, don't dismiss that. You do have a choice. You can just be like, we're not we don't have the capacity, we're not going to, but they still power through. And every time I talk to them, I get more inspired, and it makes me want to join the fight in any way I can. So I've just been, like I said, incredibly impressed with how like relentless and unyielding they are.
Mm, love that. Kate?
I'll say that for me, when I reflected on when do I leave a session feeling jazzed or a conversation, like what inspired me? Um, what's thematic about it is that the person I was listening to had a really keen ability to uh, challenge thinking in a way, not just to do it, but to help expand your thinking about a particular problem. It's often paired with also the ability to boil something down to its core problem. And somehow that mixture of the two things I find gets me really excited to show up and thinking differently about the next problem in front of me.
I love that. Anyone we have not heard from want to share? Not, that's okay.
I'm happy to share. I'm very inspired by leaders who show vulnerability, whether that's publicly or internally. But I think when you go down to your vulnerable spaces, that really creates a level of intention that drives the choices and decisions that you're making in programming. And so I think in order to have that intention, which sometimes can get lost in all of the different stakeholders that we have, you have to first be vulnerable to identify that. And so that's something that I'm impressed by those leaders that I see have the ability to share that.
Thank you.
I would have just echoed really what Jason was saying. I think the leadership in the association world is amazing. It's filled with humble people, and I mean, I'm so glad that no one's asking who specifically would you thank, because we'd probably all be here forever. And I mean, I have so many mentors from, finance, from marketing, and so on. So many people willing to part with their bits of wisdom that they picked up, but also at the same time willing to learn.
Love that. Then I will wrap out this question, and everyone, we will go to the what conversations should leaders have is what we're going to go to next. But I will end this question of what inspires you about other leaders with a moment of reflection that there are individuals and leaders that you meet that demonstrate a passion for their work, a passion for their members, and a passion for mission. That passion makes them radiant in terms of attracting others to them. And I hope you'll allow me to just take a moment that this past week we lost from the community Leslie Wittet, CAE. She was the Chief Membership Experience Officer at RIMS and was a vibrant part of this community, as well as the charrette community, as well as the association community in Chicago and nationally. And just when I think about the leadership that we need and that inspires, how she led was a perfect example of the kind of leaders that we need. I would love to, as we think about the conversations we need to have, because it's often the questions that we ask and the discussions we have that can move us forward. As you think about inspiring those that are listening in, as they think about 2026, but the rest of the decade to 2020 to 2030, would love to hear, just as a final go around and wrap up, what are the conversations that you think that association leaders need to have? I did get a bonus question. If we have time, we'll do it. But we'll do this one first. What conversations do you think the association, current and future leaders need to have to evolve our industry? I don't have an order on this one, so whoever would like to go first, we'd love to hear you.
Oh, me, my
Kate,
soapbox.
Kate,
This one fits right in something that I have just been super wound up about over the last year or so. And I think it has to do with often shifting a frame. Not always, because there's not a black and white here, but I think we can often, as association leaders, be focused on the success of our association as opposed to achieving the mission. And those two things maybe take you down different paths. And I think as we are fighting a radically changing world and how to stay relevant, thinking about new and different ways to join forces, to achieve, to amplify, to make efficient, right? And we live in a world where our members and our fields all think of themselves as special snowflakes. But the amount of overlap amongst so many of us, right, like is enormous. And, are we really serving our communities well by replicating advocacy, membership, back office, XYZ? How might we organize ourselves differently to achieve our missions in new and different ways? So that's mine.
I love that.
Well,
Stephen?
I was gonna well, you said it earlier. I think more organizations be talking about foresight. I feel like that can't be a nice thing to do at once a year at a retreat. I think it's something that maybe they need to be talking about at every meeting if they can, getting prepared for what they can and coming in the future. It was something we changed last year. We created a position on our executive committee, our foresight officer. Their whole role at every board meeting is to have a foresight discussion. Now, I will tell you, as a room full of association executives that want to solve the problem, it's been a learning experience that we're not here to solve. We're here to discuss. But it has elevated our strategic thinking on the board level to degrees I never saw coming, and it's just really, really valuable for the organization, not just my organization, but also helps develop my board members, right? As they have these conversations. So, and I was one of the ones before that was like, I've read the books. I love all the talks about foresight, and it was something we're like, yeah, we'll do it at the retreat in June. And now I truly see the value of having this conversation constantly. It's not something that's meant for once a year, and I feel somewhat more prepared for what the future will throw at us because we're having these types of conversations.
Perfect. Any others? What conversations do association leaders need to have? Julia.
Yes, I'll also get on my soapbox, and I really encourage everyone to remember the role that associations have in civil society. I have a public or a political science background, and I think we just need to recognize amidst the chaos and the uncertainty that everyone's experiencing in their own way, the role that associations have in providing collective voices to underrepresented groups and to build trust and cooperation. And I think those, there's declining trust in institutions, and I think we have a role in filling those gaps, and making the world a better place if we want to be kind of cheesy about it. But I mean, I'm really passionate about that.
Love that. Chip, did I see you on mute?
Sure. Yeah. So I would add that I think they need to have the association leaders for the coming year that need to have some honest and strategic conversations about where their members actually are, not where they assume they are, but like where they actually are and how to meet them there. Member expectations are quick evolving, especially spurred on by new technological advances and so on. So leaders need to, kind of ask like, what problems are we trying to solve for? What problems are facing our members today? Kind of like, what's his name? Uh, Clayton Christensen, the job to be done. Like identify their job to be done and kind of reassess a little bit because I think so much is changing, so much is evolving, and if you don't continually stay ahead of that, you run the risk of losing, then having to play catch up, and then the cycle kind of repeats.
Yeah, love that. Josie, I saw you on mute next.
Yeah, I think building upon the expectation, the greater expectation of your associations and your groups responding to cultural things going on, right? And people's expectations and their thoughts and what their individual feelings are about certain situations. I think the part of the conversation should be how do we get quicker to making decisions and having responses, right? I think that in associations, it's very easy to kind of say, oh, let's circle back to that. Let's talk about this. And I think being more effective in making a decision, being able to provide a response or building the systems that you need in order to be able to do that will help you with your agility, help you to move forward, help you to answer that. So I really think that's something that in the way our culture is changing and our society is changing would be helpful for organizations to be talking about.
Perfect. And then Jason would love to hear if you have one. I will say we got two additional requests. One was to go around to see if anyone has book, listening, or podcast recommendations. So we listen to Jason, then I'll go around, and not everyone needs to have one, but if you do, a quick hit list of those would be great. Jason, what do you got?
I would say continue to strive to ask or define the why. Why are we doing it? Why is this important? And ultimately, is it serving the mission? I think if we don't do that, we're going to get caught up in the noise, going to get caught up in the distraction, we're going to get caught up in whatever's going on. And we'll start trying to hit it like whack-a-mole, and that's not going to serve anybody. And if anything, that's just going to cause fatigue for all involved.
Perfect. And I would just say for me, change management has an assumption that you go through a change to reach a new stability. And now sounds like we are in a continual change cycle instead of reaching new stability. And so where there is the opportunity to create moments or smaller platforms of stability so we can then transform the next thing, I really think we do our community service where we give them places that they can rely on us. And it doesn't mean that you calcify, right? But that they know that there are places they can rely upon in a world where so much shifts and changes. Knowing what you can count on is hard to find. All right, the quick hit. Who has a resource or a reference that they want to give? Chip, what do you got?
I finished up Empire of AI, and I just was trying to look at Karen Howe. It's a fascinating book and an inside look into the companies that built the large LLMs, the good, the bad, and the quite ugly. So fascinating look. And for anyone interested in the adopting that entrepreneurial spirit, the Lean Startup by Eric Ries is always the top of my list.
I'm typing these all out and I'll hit enter at the end so everyone get them all the chat. All right, who else got one?
I have an episode, not necessarily a whole podcast
Good.
series, because I don't know enough about the series to recommend it. But the series is HR Besties. It's a couple of it's like three HR professionals in the corporate world, and there was I don't know, it just had one of these moments where you go and I was really thinking they were reflecting on the lawsuit that SHRM is dealing with. There's a pretty public lawsuit around discrimination that SHRM is handling. But for me, what was fascinating was this. How members were seeing what was happening. So those were obviously members of SHRM who were discussing what they thought was happening in this. And I thought there was a really interesting lesson for us as association professionals in seeing how members might interpret what's going on in a crisis in an organization. So,
Perfect.
There's
Stephen?
there's a really good book we're talking about burnout called Work Won't Love You Back by I had to make sure I'm saying this right, Sarah Jaffe, Jaffe. Just exactly how the title says, how to deal with sort of burnout, and especially if you are one of those that have guilt from not responding to emails or not or walking away for the weekend or your kid's Christmas recital, whatever. It's really fascinating and it very validating. So um, I really enjoyed it.
Excellent. Anyone else have one? I will give one or two. One is The Signals Are Talking. That's by Amy Webb. Now she has, I'm starting her next one, which is more recent, but that one is about how if you really want to be thinking about the future, that you need to look to the fringes, and that sort of gives you the insight to like what's going to become mainstream. And so the methodology that of like an approach to futurism, I found really relatable and interesting. I also, Sherry Jacobs' new book, The Unexpected Power of Boundaries, is a must read for every association. I mean, Jacobs, all her stuff is, but hands down, it's a great read with powerful narratives, good examples from our space and our world of some of our colleagues in there about what they've done. Unexpected Power of Boundaries. And then I am with Aaron Wallowik. We are doing an association book club next year. We're doing 6 books, free to join. Just a bunch of us. And this is our first one, which is an oldie but a goodie. But we wanted to start somewhere. If you've not yet read Unreasonable Hospitality, it is an inspiring read. And if you have not seen, the author of it worked with a gaming company to come up with a deck of cards, the face cards of which have these like really good like conversational questions on it. And I've started to use in facilitation to have groups at break play Go Fish or something, but when they play one of the cards, get to know each other. So it connects to Unreasonable Hospitality too. So there are a few other resources as sourced. I can't believe we're just about at the top of the hour. And so I'll see if anyone has one that if you were going to give yourself a piece of advice that you hope you remember in the year ahead, right? If you are going to be able to say something now that all of a sudden turned on a neon sign that you have in front of you when you work every day, what would be the piece of advice you would give yourself as you think about the year ahead you want to have? This wasn't a question we prepared beforehand, I know. And so it doesn't have to be everyone. But what is the one piece of advice that you would give yourself? Does anyone have one?
Buy OpenAI once they go to IPO.
Excellent. Anyone else?
I mean,
I
I feel like,
think,
go ahead, Josie.
okay. I think I would say take time for yourself. I'm fascinated by the conversation we're having around this. And the reason why I want to share that is because early in my career, I did have this little card that I put on my desk and it said, "You can get it done." And I was so driven by the idea of being able to get it done, by proving myself that validation, right? And being in that. So that feeds into this idea of like, I have to constantly be working and really making that shift to take time for yourself. I mean, I'm fascinated by the conversation because I'm like, how do we do it? It has to be a cultural shift within the association space, right? Because you can say it, but it's really hard to do. So that's what I would that's what I would do in the upcoming year.
Love that.
I mean, I touched on mine in the first question, but resilience beats perfection. If I had told myself that in January, it might have been a little bit of an easier year.
Perfect. I think that actually relates to Jared's he put in the chat that most members should remember that when they email us that all things are on fire all the time, it's actually a candle most days.
Well said, Jared.
Um, Sometimes I jokingly tell myself that's future Julia's problem, but that's just to remind myself that I can usually figure it out and not to borrow trouble and to think I have to figure everything out all at once. And when I'm resourceful, I'm creative, I can figure out what needs to get done to get the job done. So
Perfect.
Julia, literally exactly the same thing I was thinking. Trust future Kate. She's got it. Focus on the now. So,
Chip, you got one or no?
Yeah, I would say hold on tight because every once in a while we go through some rapid change and disruption. I don't think I was, while I thought I was, I don't think I was really prepared last January for the amount of disruption that we were going to see in the nonprofit space this year.
I think mine, did I miss anyone? I don't think so. I think mine would be a combination of better over more, kindness over being correct, and curiosity over exposition. I just think that if we could focus on doing better instead of doing more, that the more would come. I think that curiosity opens the door to learning and connection more than exposition does. I think there's a lot of potential and possibilities. The potential and possibilities that you all have blessed us with over the past hour. Stephen, Kate, Julia, Josie, Jason, Chip, thank you, thank you, thank you for spending bonus time with us this year for 2 episodes of Rockstars. We're incredibly grateful to everyone tuning in and listening in for this and every episode. We are incredibly grateful for this community over the years, for you joining us this year, and wishing you in this spirit of gratitude of the season that we're in, and in the spirit of projection as we look to not just the next year, but the next half decade, that in the coming weeks you too find the space for your entrepreneurial spirit to shine with possibility of the world you want to create in the year to come, while you're also introspective and empathetic to yourself as you demonstrate gratitude for all that you have accomplished in the year that's passed. Thank you to all of you, and may you all be Association Rockstars. Thank you.